One last bit of paperwork is Roses and Thorns. Does anyone want to volunteer at the start?
Ian, you get to volunteer.
Okay, lovely.
Want me to go first?
Yes.
Well, I'm definitely intrigued by this lady, so that is a rose, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Although obviously my character isn't, but from a personal level, I'm definitely curious about what she's doing.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm still making NPCs that you guys are interested in. There was definitely someone who could speak her language in that city that I introduced you guys to.
Barrel maker. I knew it the whole time.
Yeah, not that. Sorry, in Seawood Croft.
In the big one.
The big one.
But they would have another language there, probably.
Yeah.
We're just lazy.
No, he's
We're
just
not
in
interested.
I mean, there's no reason for you to hire a translator.
He's in the stocks.
Yeah, for your Thorn?
Thorns.
If you don't have one, that's fine. I want to make that clear. But I do appreciate criticism just so that I can try and grow a little bit. And we can improve this as best we can.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's been a lot of opportunities for story plot lines.
Mm-hmm.
They feel a little bit disconnected, but maybe that's because we're not catching them very well.
Well, this is it's a sandbox game, so you're going to see lots of sort of side quest feeling quests, I think, popping up. And part of how this is going to work is it's up to you guys to kind of pursue things as goals. I do have a narrative quest in mind, which involves your tomb raiding and which involves Kevin's sort of wizard quests. And that's sort of the main linear storyline that I put in the game so far, just that you guys have a direction to go in, period.
And all the side quests.
But I'm introducing mercenaries so that you guys have an idea of what the culture is like. I'm introducing refugees so that you guys understand what the sort of economic pressures are right now. I'm showing you guys where Pegasus are, where whatever else is. Just to be so that you guys can start thinking hey, maybe we can get some nets together and capture Pegasus as a job. Because it's a sandbox game, which means up to you guys more than a traditional D&D game to make fun for yourselves.
Yep, which means a lot of discovering random little bullshit for a while.
I'll try and think through encounters more clearly and make them fit together better. It's tricky too because I've got so many different sort of strands of ideas everywhere.
Yeah, you definitely do.
Connecting them is tricky, very, very hard. But, yeah. I'll do my best. Jay, Kevin.
Rose, I like how you're introducing the legal setting, so you're slowly introducing it by stocks for a week, sort of giving what consequences there are for certain actions before we face it, both for us and people listening. It's a good way to do it.
Yeah, I also wanted to sort of hint at sort of torture and execution as much as I could, just to add those sort of dark tones to it, because these are things that are constant. You can't really escape them in civilization.
Yeah, especially in a medieval setting. That was very common.
We're gonna
and a
watch
spectacle, too.
Yeah, to try to show off.
Yeah.
We're going to watch a bunch of refugees get slaughtered next week. So.
Yeah, I told you I have a great plan for that.
Do you have a Thorn?
Can't wait to hear it.
Thorn was maybe just sort of conceptualization where you mentioned it was on this side of town and it was on the other side. I think that's partly on us too, going through the wrong gate and they're like, oh, we have to go back around. But I think that's partly on us too.
I'll try and get better with the city descriptions. I haven't actually written out any town descriptions yet. So
They've been really good, I think. For the most part.
I was definitely rushing those more than I might have had to, had I prepared properly. So that is something I will consider spending time on next week if I can find it.
Sure. I mean, you know where we're going, so
yes,
you can prepare those specific locations.
That's definitely incredibly helpful. We'd have to start and stop a lot more if you guys were just going off-road.
Randomly.
Just to random... I can generate 5 random road encounters and just sprinkle them where I want. But ideally, I want to know what's on the road beforehand because it feels more fair that way. Because I'm not arbitrarily saying there's this on this road. I rolled an army north of Seawood Croft, and you ran into a small army north of Seawood Croft. That happened. Guys. That was a bad encounter for you guys to roll. But it was real, it happened. Kevin, you're last, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's hard to think of, isn't it?
I imagine
you covered most of it, and most of it's pretty obvious what you did well.
Is it? You say so.
I do enjoy the fact that there were so many little things that didn't. I don't want to say that they didn't matter, but they weren't immediately like pressing things that we had to deal with. Right? That bar fight broke out and it resolved itself without us stepping in, type of idea. The world still lives around it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that we didn't get anything out of that either.
Mm-hmm.
Since you now know, well, tensions are bad with the people up north and blah, 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 and all the other good stuff. Without us having to sit there and be like, all right, spend 6 rounds beating the crap out of a drunk.
Yeah. As a DM, I suggest whenever you're writing an encounter or a situation for your players to see or get involved in, always have it written out what happens if the players didn't exist.
Yeah.
Because that makes the world alive, right? In a way that it isn't necessarily. A big one for that, I got that from Dungeon World, and Dungeon World suggests every quest that your heroes go on should have consequences to it. That is to say, if the heroes don't complete the quest, something bad happens, or at least something happens. Yeah. And doing that even on a smaller scale is useful.
Thorn-wise, it basically comes down to, it's a tough one, but it's detail in descriptions.
Always tricky.
Yeah, it's always tricky because if you give away too much, we know it's a key and important thing, whereas other times, like, going into 6 paragraphs of detail isn't required and just slows everything down.
Just writing that would be impossible for me right now.
Yeah, that's not what I mean. You don't need to go into 6 paragraphs of detail basically ever, but in situations where we walk into something that is potentially
dangerous, yeah,
not even just dangerous or just somewhat important, having only the details of who's in the room or whatever or basic layout of the room isn't really enough for us to grab onto and make something interesting out of.
Okay, I will work on adding life to my descriptions.
Yeah. Again, it's a tough one because going into it too far isn't worth it.
It's a balancing act.
Yeah. It's useful because what it lets me do is it lets me add details that are important and also details that are not important.
Yeah.
So, for example, the classic example of the hallway, I can describe it having a flagstone floor, which could be pressure plates, but I can also describe roots hanging from the ceiling or sort of moisture on the walls and stuff like that, which adds life to the scene. Possibly that gives you things to work with. You could try and pull on those roots to make the ceiling collapse. The water on the walls could also be on the floor and make you slip.
Freeze it.
Or you could freeze it, and break the walls apart or something. But those details don't necessarily mean anything. And so you can lose the details that do hint at danger in the details that don't.
I mean, like,
that's
the
fine.
mercenary camp is a great example of just enough life where I could ask you a couple more things and, like, I can feed off of what you gave me type of stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas the inn with the girl in it, it was nothing.
Well, that's the difference between me thinking I'm going to plan an encounter before I come here and me being like, hey, I guess that this girl could be in this inn. Let's make it show up. Yeah, I should be more brave in my descriptions, I think, and just sort of roll with it and come up with the top of my head. And that's learning to write quickly, and it's something I need to do, I guess, as a dungeon master and get better at.
I don't mind waiting like an extra 30 seconds every time we walk into a room to get a little more life into each room.
That would definitely help. So we will experiment with that next session if everybody's okay with it. Thank you all for listening, and thank you players for giving me criticism. Those of you listening at home, feel free to leave comments or send an email to the email address that has been created for me. I will read your comments and your suggestions and your ideas, and I will try and include them if I think they fit. I hope you enjoyed.